Hi, Jason. How are you?
Raul, it is great to be back with you.
Thank you very much for being here. Okay, the drop in Disney, Netflix, and Meta shares and CNN ratings, do you think it represents somehow the beginning of the end of progressivism as big business?
Great question, and not something that has been posed to me up until this time. I do think that a number of these companies are facing challenges for their own reasons. I think with regard to Disney, that you're absolutely spot on, that it's largely a pushback against the wokeism, the progressivism, the aspect of the radical left that is encroached on their culture. I think Netflix might be a little bit more direct, though, in saying they just haven't had that good of content lately. Now, I like a number of shows on Netflix. I like the Love is Blind series and Love is Blind Brazil. I'll admit that I'm a sucker for reality TV. Narcos is another good one, but Netflix has not kept up with Amazon Prime. So I think they're a little bit different, but with regard to Disney, you're exactly right that this is as a direct result of their going woke. And as we know, President Trump says, everything woke turns to, well, you know the rest of the sentence.
Okay, thank you. How is your relationship with Elon Musk? Do you know him? Do you think he's really going to defend the freedom of expression in Twitter, or he just wants Twitter because it's a good business? Now we know that the deal is pending.
Yeah, another great question. So I've only met Elon Musk one time. It was in the fall of 2016 after President Trump was elected, but before he was inaugurated. So it was during that transition time at Trump Tower. And I doubt Mr. Musk even remembers me, but I've been critical of late, even before the news today, that the deal appears to be falling apart for a couple of reasons. One, the numbers, the economics of the deal simply don't work. As of last night, when the stock market closed, Twitter's stock price was 17% below the bid of $54 a share that Elon Musk had put forward. That means that the deal really isn't economically feasible. Additionally, it's probably the most heavily leveraged buyout that I've ever seen. And when you look at Twitter's economics, when you look at what their cash number is, we don't know the exact cash number, but we know their EBITDA number. If that EBITDA number is only somewhere in the 547 million range, their actual cash number is much smaller. So the economics of the deal wouldn't work. But I've made two other points with regard to Elon Musk that I think are very critical. Number one, even if this deal were to go through, if he reconstitutes it, comes up with some other vision or fashion to put it together, the earliest it would take place would be after the November midterm elections in the United States. This means that no changes are happening anytime soon. And there are many things could happen between now and when he may or may not even actually take over. And you have to wonder, will the change, will the culture ever actually change at Twitter? And the other point that I would say is that Musk, when he made his comments the other day about allowing President Trump to return to Twitter, that struck me as being a little bit insincere. If you looked at the full context of his comments, it seems he was much more upset that Trump followers were moving away from Twitter and that he wanted Trump back so he would get those followers as opposed to, say, a full-throated embrace of free speech.
Exactly. Okay. In case Elon Musk can complete this deal, purchasing Twitter, how will that affect GETTR?
Yeah, another good question. So I think from the news today, I don't think that Musk is going to be able to save the deal. I think this is blowing up. And you look at the stock price for Twitter already being down at the time of this recording, at least, already down another 12%, literally just today. So the bottom seems to be falling out. So I don't think he'll be able to save it. But even if for some reason he did, the thing is that Musk has now effectively spent tens, if not hundreds of millions of free media dollars, the attention, the media, of showing why Twitter has so many faults, why it has so many problems. And everybody fully realizes now the shortcomings of Twitter, the problems with their algorithm, the problems with bots, the issues of different users being treated unfairly. And I think that it's highlighted the fact that Twitter is so fundamentally broken. I don't think Twitter can even actually be saved at this point. And so one of the things with GETTR is we bill ourselves as the all-in-one free speech platform. Not only do we have the short format microblogging, essentially of putting up your individual post. We have our short video format that we're launching on June 1, which will be Vision, our competitor to TikTok and Instagram Reels. We'll have DMs, direct messages, that come about June 15th. And then when we move into GETTR Pay starting this summer and this fall, we're going in a different direction. But Raul, I'll tell you, one of the big things, I know the PanAmPost has been active on here as well, has been live streaming on GETTR. And we just announced earlier this week that as a platform, we've now had more than 100 million views of GETTR live streams on our platform. We're now booking out from 6 in the morning to 10 at night. There are shows every hour or every half hour from around the world all day long. So whether it's in English or Spanish or Portuguese or German or French, whole myriad of languages, we have original content that's available only here on GETTR. It's really a fascinating dynamic, and I think that we're making a major push into the content creation side of things.
Yeah, okay. Just a few days ago, we were hearing about the intention of Biden administration to open a disinformation governance board, also known as the Ministry of Truth, a concept taken from the 1984 novel by George Orwell. Do you think that this will be used to persecute conservative voices and also to impose an official truth, which will be a totalitarian vision? And that's very serious because it will come from a security institution, that is the DHS, right?
Well, I'm glad that you brought up George Orwell in 1984, because that's exactly what this sounds like. Nina Jankowicz, the woman that Biden has appointed to fill this position within the Department of Homeland Security, this literally sounds like some kind of dystopian authoritarian future where the government controls everything that we're allowed to say. You couldn't make this up. If President Trump had tried to do something like this, there would be protests. They'd say that this is the end of freedom, the end of democracy. But part of the reason, Raul, I think this is happening is because we're actually seeing the UK, the EU, even in Brazil, we're seeing some of the governments or agencies within governments start to make moves to try to take away free speech rights. Now, in the United States, the First Amendment, our right to free speech, is pretty heavily protected. And there are already lawsuits from the states of Missouri and Louisiana to challenge the constitutionality of this Ministry of Truth, or the Ministry of Disinformation, depending on whatever you want to call it. So I ultimately think that legal challenges will stop this, and maybe they can make recommendations, but I don't think it will ever get as bad here in the US as it is, say, in the EU or potentially in the UK if their online safety bill does in fact pass.
Okay. With the rise of new social networks and media that combat the cancellation culture, what do you think is going to be the future of freedom of expression in the States?
Another good question. Last night in my Miller Live show, I went into this and addressed it. And I think right now, effectively, the US is in the middle of our second civil war. Now, that might seem like a rather bold statement. And obviously, there hasn't been a single shot that's been fired. But you look at the way that the country has become so polarized culturally. You look at in the aftermath of COVID and COVID regulations, the way that people have started to move to different parts of the country, depending on their ideology. Red states are becoming redder. Blue states are becoming bluer. And I think with regard to culture, people are starting to self-segregate and split out, and right of center people watch certain news, left of center people watch other certain news. One of the good things, though, and Brett Stevens from the New York Times pointed this out in his column yesterday, is the fact that America has always done a pretty good job of eventually pushing back against some of the more radical elements. And I think as we look through things such as the Black Lives Matter or critical race theory, or some of the weird things like men participating in women's sports, some of these things that are way outside of the norm that I do not think should be I do not think should be the cultural norms. I think society is already starting to push back and say, hey, enough is enough on a few of these things. This is getting a little bit too crazy for all of us.
Okay. How the launching of Trump's Truth Social affects GETTR?
So in the short term, since it's only been around for a couple of months now, it's actually helped us quite a bit. We've had a couple of really good growth months. Keep in mind that President Trump's platform is only available on the Apple App Store at the moment. They're saying they'll be available online as far as a web-based browser, but there's still no plans and nothing in the near future for them to join Google or Samsung phones. Why does this matter? Because approximately 58% of all Trump voters in the United States have Google or Samsung phones. And I can tell you that specific to in Brazil, that approximately 87% of, say, Bolsonaro supporters use Google or Samsung phones. And so in many of the countries around the world, Google or Samsung devices are the dominant platform, partially because Apple phones are so much more expensive. And until President Trump can figure out how to crack the code there or get approval from Google, he's going to have difficulty scaling. But we've already always said from the beginning that we want to do two things that will really set us apart from any other platform. Number one, make sure our technology is really good. We're doing that with Vision, the short video platform. We're doing it with live streams. We're doing it with GETTR Pay. So the technology is great, but the other thing too is that we're going to be an international platform. That's why I very much appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and why we're growing so fast in places like Brazil, France, Germany, the UK, even starting to make efforts into Colombia. This is really helping us to scale, and I think it's what will set us apart.
Yeah, that's my next question. Tell us about how is GETTR going in Brazil and Colombia, and I saw you also went to France and India, right?
So went to France. I've not been to India just yet. I had to reschedule the trip, but I will be back. Actually, I'll be in Vienna, Austria next week, and I'll also be back in London, England next week, where we're continuing to grow. And right now, the UK is our number 3 country, and Germany, which actually gets a lot of their news content from German-speaking Austria, is our number 4 country, and France is number 5. And so we continue to see the strong growth. Brazil remains our number 2 country with about 13.5% of our overall user base. We'll be returning next month in June.
Okay, perfect. Some recent polls show how Hispanics are becoming more Republican and less Democratic. What is your opinion about the influence of Hispanics in the next victory of the Republican Party? I mean, the Hispanexit.
Well, it's going to be absolutely critical. In fact, the Washington, D.C. publication Roll Call, which is essentially a political analyst, says that the Nevada Senate seat currently held by Cortez Masto is the most likely seat to flip from one party to the other in the 2022 elections. The main reason for that are the fact that the Hispanic Americans, Latino Americans have moved so quickly away from the Democratic Party into the Republican Party. That's the biggest reason why you could say the bottom is falling out of the Democratic Party. And I think it's for a couple of reasons. It's not just the inflation. It's not just the economic crisis that we're in as a country. It's not just the southern border, which has become completely porous and thanks to Joe Biden's policies, but it's also on the crime and safety issue. And the Democrats' embrace of the BLM movement, the radical left, efforts like defund the police, and also coddling of criminals has really turned off the Hispanic and Latino American communities. I think the Democrats are in real trouble when it comes to the election in 2022. And I think whether it's Nevada, whether it's Florida, a number of other states, Hispanic Americans will be trending sharply towards the Republicans.
Okay. What is your opinion about the effects that the Metaverse will have on the culture and on the minds of the young people? It seems like a very heavy new drug, and it is difficult to find some benefits for ordinary people in this game.
So I missed the first word, and if you could just repeat the question for me, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, sure. What is your opinion about the effects of the Metaverse? You know, the Metaverse.
Yes.
Yeah, will have on the culture.
Yeah. So here's the thing on the Metaverse. There are a number of things in technology that they're here now, but we never really know how long they're going to be. How long they're going to be here, or what big of an impact they're going to have. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when MySpace was going to be the big rage that transformed the country and the world. That ended up not becoming a big thing. Facebook ended up becoming bigger, and then other platforms started to become more powerful and more influential than, say, Facebook. With regard to the metaverse, the question that I have there is there's no substitute for real life. Maybe there's an aspect of gaming. I think there's obviously a certain age range that might be interested in metaverse things, but I find that a real tough sell for anyone, say, older than 35 or 40. But as far as younger people, I'm still not convinced that that it has that broad of an appeal. I know that my 13-year-old daughter, we got her the Oculus with the virtual reality, and she used it a few times, and now it's in the pile with all of her former toys that she no longer plays with, because she'd much rather get out there and actually play with her friends or go ride her bike or go play softball. And so I'm just not convinced yet that people are going to step into some alternate world and completely disassociate themselves with the rest of society. I think that different aspects like distance learning, telemedicine, I think working remote, these types of things are definitely going to be the norm as we start going forward. But this whole notion of the metaverse and going in some alternate reality where you're going to be spending money to wear different fake outfits online, I'm not sold yet. I'm not sold.
Okay. Last question. Transhumanism is promoted by Elon Musk. Just take a look on what they are doing in Neuralink. What is your position on this? You are for that or you're against it?
Now, I think if I understood you with Elon Musk and the Neuralink, is that what you brought up?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, transhumanism. You know, the mix of the technology with the human being. Transhumanism.
So, Elon Musk is a brilliant innovator. He's maybe the most gifted and talented innovator that we have in our lifetime, maybe even I want to say ever. We don't know. I mean, he'll be able to send people to Mars. His boring tunnel technology is absolutely fantastic. SpaceX, Tesla have all been wildly successful. I'm not so sure about people tapping their brains into robots and things like this. I think some of this might be a little bit too much science fiction, but hey, you never know where things might go in 100 or 200 years as things start moving. But I never bet against Elon Musk on the innovation side. Only place where I'll bet against him is when it's a really bad business deal.
Okay, thank you very much. Something that you want to add?
No, I just want to say that, I would say that GETTR is very much making a big effort to grow our Spanish-speaking community. We've added a number of influencers that are joining the platform, different news outlets, whether it be the PanAmPost, even some of your competitors like El American or Americano Media. We're starting to get a lot more Spanish-speaking outlets for breaking news, and we're really strongly building the community. And so big tech, I don't think, has done anything in particular to lift the Hispanic American, Latino American communities, or even the Spanish-speaking communities worldwide. But we're going to make sure that GETTR is a place for free speech. And we also look forward to, maybe in June or July, starting to expand our efforts into Spain as well, especially now they're seeing a conservative resurgence with the growth of some of the election wins of the Vox party. So look forward to visiting Spain. But to all of our Spanish-speaking friends, we're going to have a lot more fun stuff coming here at GETTR, so stick with us.
Thank you very much, Jason.
Thank you, sir.